In the 1600s, the Dutch Republic had just emerged from the crucible of the 80-year war against Spain. Their ports, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Middelburg, buzzed with the energy of a people unshackled. For decades, they had watched the ships of Spain and Portugal return laden with silver from the Americas and spices from the Indies. The Portuguese and Spanish had ruled the seas. But Dutch merchants, unwilling to watch others grow rich, began their own expeditions. Dozens of small companies competed fiercely, each outfitting ships for voyages that might last years. The risks were staggering. Many ships never returned. Pirates, storms, and disease devoured lives by the thousands. But when one did return, the profits were immense. An investor who risked a few hundred guilders might receive 10 times his money back if a voyage succeeded. Still, constant rivalry threatened to ruin them all. The pre-companies undercut one another, bidding prices up in Asia, flooding the market in Europe. It was clear, divided, the Dutch could not hope to challenge the Iberian giants. Enter Johan van Oldenbarnevelt, a statesman of extraordinary vision. In 1602, he persuaded the Dutch States General to unite these competing companies into one. A single, mighty enterprise, the VOC, the Dutch East India Company. This was not just a trading venture. It was granted powers like those of a sovereign nation, the right to make war, forge alliances, build fortresses, and coin money. For the first time, a private company was entrusted with the instruments of empire. And so, in that year, Dutch citizens crowded into Amsterdam to buy shares in this new company. Bakers, artisans, merchants, all became investors. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the world's first stock exchange to ever exist, came alive with the trading of VOC shares. The dream of empire was shared amongst the people. The VOC wasted no time in making its mark. Its captains sailed for Asia with convoys of sturdy East Indiamen, ships bristling with cannon, their holds built for cargo but also for war. The man who would embody the company's ruthless ambition was Jan Pieter Zoon Cohen. A hard, determined figure, Cohen believed utterly in the VOC's mission, monopoly of the spice trade, secured by any means necessary. In 1619, he turned his eyes on Jayakarta, a small port on the north coast of Java. It lay in a strategic position, perfect as the center of Dutch power. Cohen seized the town, burned it to the ground, and built in its place a fortress city, Batavia. From here, the VOC would rule its Asian empire. Batavia was a strange, hybrid world, Dutch merchants living behind massive walls, canals dug in imitation of Amsterdam, markets crowded with Javanese, Chinese, Arabs, and Indians. It was both a city and a command post, from which fleets were dispatched to enforce the company's will across the seas. The riches at stake were staggering. Nutmeg, found only in the Banda Islands, was valued in Europe at up to 200 times its cost in Asia. Cloves, from the Maluku Islands, were similarly precious. A single successful voyage could yield profits of hundreds of %. By the mid-1600s, the VOC was the richest company the world had ever seen. Adjusted for modern value, some estimates suggest it was worth over $7 trillion. More than Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft combined. Through the 17th century, the VOC expanded like a living organism, weaving a web of outposts across the Indian Ocean and beyond. From the Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa to Nagasaki in Japan, Dutch strongholds controlled the flow of goods. Its fortress at Malacca commanded the straits through which much of Asia's trade passed. Its base at Colombo on Ceylon gave it control of cinnamon. In India, factories at Surat and Pulicat tapped into textile markets. And in Japan, the small island of Deshima became the empire's lone European gateway, granting the Dutch access to silver and trade denied to others. The VOC's fleets were the largest in the world, sometimes numbering more than 150 ships at sea. These ships were not only traders but floating fortresses, their cannon ensuring that treaties were honored and threats were defeated. At its peak, the VOC employed more than 70,000 people. Its Amsterdam headquarters became the beating heart of world commerce. Its warehouses brimmed with pepper, silk, tea, and porcelain. And at the stock exchange, fortunes were made and lost as shares of the VOC rose and fell with the fate of distant voyages. The company became, in effect, a state within a state. Its governors-general, like Cohen and his successors, ruled with authority greater than that of kings. Diplomacy, conquest, and commerce were blended into a single machine. But wealth came at a moral cost. The VOC crushed their competitors and enslaved locals who would not submit to its monopoly. From the nutmeg plantations of Banda to the pepper fields of Java, local rulers were coerced into signing away their sovereignty. For the VOC, this was simply business. Trade was war, and war was trade. Back in Europe, the VOC was celebrated as a marvel. It had turned a small republic into a world power. Amsterdam, with its canals and merchant houses, was hailed as the warehouse of the world. Valued higher than any company that has existed before or since. But no empire lasts forever. By the late 17th century, the VOC faced formidable rivals. The English East India Company rose to power, challenging Dutch dominance in India and the Spice Islands. The French, too, sought a share of Asian trade. Wars between European powers spilled across the seas, draining the VOC's resources. At the same time, the very success of global trade undermined the company's monopolies. Spices, once rare luxuries, became more common. Prices fell. The Dutch grip on exclusive trade loosened. Internally, the company became bloated. What had begun as a daring venture had hardened into bureaucracy. The VOC's governors in Asia often cared more for personal enrichment than for the company's health. Corruption spread, debts piled up, and dividends shrank. Figures like Governor-General Gustav Willem van Imhoff tried to reform the company in the 18th century, but by then its structure was too unwieldy, its rot too deep. By the end of the 18th century, the Dutch Republic itself was faltering. Britain ruled the seas. Napoleon's wars shook Europe. The VOC's fortresses, once symbols of dominance, became liabilities to defend. The company, once the richest in the world, was drowning in debt. Shareholders received little return. Corruption was endemic. The dream had curdled into decay. Finally, in 1799, after 197 years of mostly dominance, the Dutch government dissolved the company. Its debts and possessions were absorbed by the state. The VOC, the first great multinational corporation, was no more. Yet its legacy endures. The VOC pioneered the stock market, joint stock corporations, and the very concept of global capitalism. It reshaped world trade, linking Europe and Asia in ways that still echo today. The VOC story is a tale of visionaries and merchants who built an empire of commerce, but also of the greed and corruption that brought it down. It is the story of how the world entered the age of global trade, and the shadows that came with it.